I mean, the biggest issue when you talk about teams of service versus the contract, Twitch really takes the position that, like I said, consistent with 230, they can do whatever they want on their stream. They can decide who can stream and who can't, you know, which as far as I'm concerned is just censorship. And so what came out with the jury when Twitch sued James for breaching the terms of service, they said, well, James did enter into a contract with the terms of service, but we don't think it's enforceable because they waived it, because they don't really believe in any rules. Because when it comes down to it, what Twitch does is when they and they said this, there was a guy named Jason Maestas who just said, look, we can do business with whoever we want. If somebody's on our platform, we can just choose to get rid of them. And, you know, at the end, for streamers and people like James and everyone else, I mean, you think you're operating with a set of rules that you can work within the guidelines, but at the end of the day, Twitch can just do whatever they want, and they don't really need a valid reason. So whether it's terms of service or whether it's contract, they don't seem to think they have to follow anything. And they even write in the terms of service they can still suspend you or ban you or throw you off for whatever they deem fit. So the jury got that. And you know, listening over and over to, you know, the Twitch people that we had on the stand for days talking about how there literally was no synergy, or there was, you know, there's no consistency, if you will, between why one person got banned and they didn't. And the way partners are treated versus the public is dramatically different. They use a phrase called context, which is just another word to say we can do whatever we want, which is we look at the context and we decide. And, you know, at the risk of maybe talking, they also had, which you're probably familiar with, this strike guide that was kept confidential, which is what they use to decide, certainly decide whether or not to punish the public. And with partners, they use it as whether or not to sort of elevate it, is the term they do, to the partnership conduct team. Well, this strike guide they wanted to keep secret. In fact, they went back to court to try and have it sealed, or at least portions of it. We've got, you know, the ones that were talked about in court, the judge said no. But Twitch wants to make sure that the public doesn't know how there's this disparate treatment for people that they want to keep and make them the billions of dollars they make each year, versus somebody else that they, for whatever reason, want to choose to ban or suspend, or in James's case, to do it for political or public relations issues, so that they could hopefully get people to say, oh, look, they did take a strong stance. So they'll get rid of him to benefit all the other people that are doing things so much worse than whatever they claim. Yeah,
it's a very interesting thing to come out right now, especially with recently there was the hot tub meta issue that's been going around on Twitch. Yeah. You know, it's very, very interesting. So, and I want to mention that. So you mentioned the strike guide that came out at trial. So it's my understanding that the actual strike guide itself, the document, is it's been sealed, right? So that can't actually be shared with anyone. Per the court's ruling.
That's not 100% correct. So portions of it have been redacted, which is whatever we talked about at trial. The judge has said, look, that's in the public domain. Jury heard it. People that were listening and watching heard it. That's fair game. What we didn't go through, and it's a, you know, it looks like almost like a Chagall type, you know, I mean, you're like a mosaic. It's, you know, color coded, and it's something you could literally, you know, put up on your wall. We didn't go through everything in there, and the portions we didn't, Twitch was able to get the court to seal. So that portion is, and I know James is going to talk about it or has talked about it, you know, kind of go through what we did. And the transcripts that we have is something that we could make available to you and your viewers, where you can see us asking questions of John Howell, who was head of North American Partnerships, and Ryan Kennedy and Jason Maestas, all about what this strike guide is. And Kennedy developed it. And it's not even from the terms of service, which is just, you know, shocking. It's from what they call these community guidelines, which I don't really understand what any of this means. And I think the jury kind of made the point to say, look, none of it means anything, because it's just Twitch writing things down that they will tell you, hey, look, you got to follow this. But at the end, they don't really care whether you follow it or not, because they're going to do whatever they want. So that's what the basis is. And it's supposed to be absolutely used for the public. When it comes to partners, they raise it, and then this conduct team, along with the various liaisons or managers, decide whether to even raise it with the partner. You know, and we went through certain people that did things that, you know, they, after the fact, after they testified that at the end they didn't do any investigation, they didn't do this, they came in and tried to say about James, well, look, there's all these problems, he violated this rule and that rule and that rule. Well, we pointed out, you know, at least one streamer and some other streamers that, you know, had done that before, and they didn't enforce it at all. And in fact, in one person's case, they gave him a custom contract. Well, why? You know, you could infer from that well, he made him a lot of money, and at the end of the day, they're chasing a bottom line here, and so they're going to pick and choose whoever they want to put up there. Which, you know, again, is like they're going to decide who they censor and who they don't, and they're not going to put a set rules that you as a streamer or you as the public can count on when you go and put your, you know, many people put their livelihood out there. This is what they're counting on, you know, basically paying their mortgage, paying their rent. And you can't count on them to basically follow those rules, because at the end they have the out to say we can do whatever we want.
Right.
And that was the case with James. And so, you know, you're really left in a quandary that people, you know, and that's what's so important about the second cause of action, just to sort of, you know, pivot to that, right? Sure. Which is the implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing. The jury found that, right, that Twitch didn't act fairly, right? And so that they didn't act in good faith. Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure that people understand what that cause of action is. So basically, in every single contract that anyone enters into, not just with Twitch or, you know, with social media platforms, but any contract, there is this implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing. It basically means that you're not going to do anything. You're not going to do anything to, you know, sabotage the contract in some way. Like, you're not going to do something that's acting unfairly under this contract so that the other person can't benefit under it. So anyway, sorry, I'll go back to you, Bill, for what the jury found and kind of what the evidence was on this, and I guess sort of what James's allegations were with that type of claim.
Right, and just as you said, that, you know, you're not entering into a contract for, you know, basically improper reasons, and you're going to use your good faith to try and follow it, and you want to act fairly. And the jury found that. And again, it comes back to these rules that really don't mean anything. That this contract that they entered into with James, they had no intention of following it or caring about it. They, you know, there's testimony that said all these contracts like James were renewed all the time. And then they were saying, well, we didn't renew that, but they couldn't point to a specific letter or specific document that said, hey, excuse me, we're not renewing the contract, or we're going to terminate it, which they had a right to do. And we also went through evidence where when James was, they called him a sub, like, you know, subscriber machine back in 2014. And even though the contract renewed automatically, they were afraid he might go to another platform. They were chasing him down to get him to sign an extension. I mean, that's how aggressively pursued him when they thought it would work for them. But when it didn't work for them, they just basically took the contract and threw it aside. And, you know, they weren't acting fairly, and, you know, they didn't act in good faith. I mean, they acted in bad faith. I mean, when you look at it, that's what the jury found. And I mean, that's a real telling thing when you talk about these contracts. And again, this is the standard contract for most streamers, you know, whether you're Ninja, whether you were Dr. Disrespect at that time, or whether you're someone that just, you know, got your first contract and you're looking to make this your living, right?
Yeah.
You're putting in all the time and effort, and you're spending all the money to build out whatever you want to stream, your computer, your system, you know, your office, however you're going to do this. And at the end of the day, they don't give it much more consideration. They testify that to them, it was just how they were going to pay you. The rest of the stuff didn't matter.
Yeah, yeah. So one question that I have about the contract is, you know, there's sort of, I was talking a little bit earlier about the terms of service and the contract, how those two are kind of like competing sources of like the rules that everyone's supposed to abide by, right? Did the contract ever actually refer to the terms of service and the community guidelines? It does not. That blows my mind. Right. It blows my mind. I assumed when I was first, you know, analyzing these issues over the summer, I assumed that these kinds of platforms were going to incorporate those because that would give them a ton of leverage in these contracts. I suspect it may now. Well, yeah.
I've seen a present contract from the individuals I've been talking to. If anyone reaching out, if they got treated by Twitch unfairly, and there is a on the I think termination clause, there's another line that adds in the terms of service, so it is there.
Wow. I'll tell you what I thought was super telling and shows you how their lack of concern for these quote terms of service or rules, if you will, is we asked over and over again, when you're dealing with partners, they know, they know where to send James' check, right? They know how to contact them via email. If you were going to update the terms of service and it's that important, wouldn't you send an email that says, hey, by the way, we changed this thing, we want you to follow it. And then I ask questions about TwitchCon, where you get all these streamers that come together. If you want to make sure everyone is truly following the quote rules, whatever you're going to make them to be, even though they change depending on who you are, wouldn't you have like a session where you could bring in all these streamers and let them ask questions about what is the, what would you get banned for, what you wouldn't, what rule means this, what rule means that? And the fact that they don't do that shows their just lack of concern for it. Yeah. And I mean, it kind of gets back to the strike guide. I don't know if James told you, the analogy they used for why they wanted to keep it confidential, and it still kind of befuddles me, is it's like if you were going to be speeding and you somehow wanted to know what the speed gun was set at, you would then push your nose, right up to the line. But the problem, of course, is that's the wrong analogy. The question is, if you're driving down the road and they don't post a speed limit and they're going to pull you over and charge you for speeding, don't you think they need to tell you what the speed limit is?
Yeah, I mean, it's an example during trial that was given. It was just didn't make sense.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and it just kind of comes back to, look, you've got a company, it's part of Amazon making billions of dollars, that at the end of the day, they're not worried about the streamers. They're worried about doing whatever they want. Yeah. And if they want to put somebody up, that's fine. If they want to take them off, that's their attitude. That's fine too. They don't want to create a platform where, people have rules that they believe they can follow, and they're going to get Twitch to follow those rules as well. And I mean, that, the basic, like, bare essence, right? That's a contract. Like, I can count on you to do what you say in the contract. You count on me to do what I'm going to say. Otherwise, I'm going to use a legal term, right? What you understand, it's illusionary, meaning it means nothing, right? Yeah. So they don't want that. And you've got, and I've told James this, I have a son who does this, and I look at this and I say, you're getting into a system here that either we as a government have to regulate, because you can't count on the businesses to do it, because they're just going to do whatever they want. And take it to its logical conclusion. They could decide, because they don't like you, because you got black hair, you got blonde hair, they're just going to get rid of you because they have too many blonde streamers. They want something else. I mean, it's nuts. Yeah. And they would tell you, if you really put them under oath and asked them, that yes, they can do that.
And that's wild. I mean, they actually, so at trial, that actually was their argument that they made. Is that correct? More or less.
Back to black hair and blonde hair people. I mean, their argument was, just to be clear, their argument was, it's our platform. And I'll quote Jason Masis, who was at one point the head of the partnership conduct team. We can do business with whomever we want. Said differently, the terms of service, the community guidelines, the contract, none of that matters. But we, Twitch, can do business with whomever we want.
And the speeding example was given by Brad Ramey, who is a current partner manager. So yes, that was said at trial as the reason for why they don't give out the strike guide.